There's a moment happening this week. You saw it on your GoFundMe, which I think is now up to 600,000. You saw it in the results of the election and the record vote, certainly in New York since the 60s, the biggest vote for a mayor since the 1960s. So people re-engaging, which also may be one of Trump's legacies, that he's got people interested in politics as if it were a reality television show.
I think there's a more complicated thing here. I mean, we've gone through this year, this unprecedented year. Just shocking in every respect, and nobody has done anything. And actually, it's been characterized by not least of all, by the institutions that we expect to do something, kind of folding. And this is, media outlets, news outlets who have groveled, courts who have succumbed. If you're a good half of the country that is passionately opposed to Trump, you've had nowhere to turn.
Well, hold on a minute. We had 7 million people marched for No Kings. There have been some very determined judges who've called him out and who've stopped him exporting people to El Salvador. I mean, there have been all sorts of judges who've said, no, you can't do this. You can't suspend SNAP benefits.
We've had a No Kings protests that the administration seemed very ably to ignore in every way, to shrug off. It's no sweat off of us. You have a justice system which is run amok without restraints, which no courts have been able to effectively restrain. Plus, you have a Supreme Court, which has basically in every instance. I mean, it's not even that they have decided in the Trump administration's favor, because then that might precipitate something. They've done this other thing of allowing things to go on and then putting their decision off. So they have not even had to assume responsibility for this. But I think at this moment, having seen that institutional failure, there is this moment. The election now has given people's individual votes, and I think it's this moment when people say maybe we have to take this into our own hands. And I take this personally because I think that's what people shelling out all this money for this legal case that I've been involved in is about. People want to do something. They want to put their $10 or $15 or $100, and most of the contributions have been under that. They want to put that down. Yes, I want to do something. Take my money. I need to be a part of something. So that's to harness that, and I wish I knew how to harness things. I wish I were a person with an organizational background, because I think this could come together in something, and I think this is something that makes these, that you could confront this despicable gang.
Well, 1 year in, I do think it's fair to say, especially after the election on Tuesday and the vote for the redistricting of California, that Governor Newsom is clearly at this stage, and of course it's early, ahead in the race in terms of Democratic leadership. And he was posting yesterday pictures of what appeared to be Donald Trump asleep. And you will have heard in the press conference that he gave that every time Donald Trump got a question, he just threw it to J.D. Vance. So it seemed that he looked exhausted this week. He looked exhausted. His cankles were playing up. I'm not saying the guy hasn't been running around the world. He has, and for someone who's 79, his schedule is incredible. But he looks ill.
Well, you're always killing him off.
I'm not killing telling him off. I'm just saying that Governor Newsom pointed out that he was asleep and he was like, Dozy Don is back. So in terms of your point that nobody's doing anything and nobody's cutting through, actually people did cut through at the election. In the off-year elections, there was a rousing...
I am saying that that there does seem at this moment, and that could go away, to be that the ground seems to be shifting, and it could shift very fast. You pull the thread, and things sometimes unravel very quickly. So this is the moment that we're in, and it is the moment. The people in the White House who I was speaking to yesterday, the person, I only spoke to one person, let me clarify. I think that was what was on this person's mind, and that's what this person represented was on a lot of people's minds in the White House, that the unraveling may have begun. And the unraveling, and even to the extent of this person talking about a scenario going around the White House in which they lose both houses. They actually lose the Senate, which is a leap, as well as the House. Now that becomes existential, because if that happens, all of the people it's not just Trump, the people in the White House, their careers, possibly their lives are destroyed. I mean, you're suddenly looking at a scenario in which there is an impeachment and finally a conviction, if were that to happen. So within the White House, the fact that they have to consider that, and the fact that they are considering that, is a moment.
We're recording this on Friday, and there's a new movie opening tonight called Nuremberg, which is about the Nuremberg trials. I went to a screening of it earlier this week, and it couldn't be more apropos for the moment. And you have that whole sense of, this is Hitler's cabinet sitting there. He's died by suicide at this stage, as have various other people around him. But some of the people who believed in him are sitting there, and justice has caught up with them, and it's very well done. It's Russell Crowe back in a role that really suits him as Hermann Goering, and I really recommend people go and see it if you want to see what happens after the tyrant has left the stage.
I'm going to push back and loathe to make that comparison.
Of course you're going to push back.
I don't think it's helpful for a variety of reasons, among which, Trump. There are many things about the Trump administration, but the Jews are still alive.
Well, of course the Jews are still alive, and we have social media, and we're all running around saying, is it an autocracy? Is it an autocracy? Which obviously you can't do in an autocracy. But my point is, it's this notion of a charismatic leader and what happens when he exits the stage, and the people that are left behind.
I just think that's unhelpful. And if Russell Crowe and Hollywood are doing it, that's an indication of how unhelpful it is. And let's hammer a point into the ground.
There is an element of the sledgehammer about it, but it's never a bad thing to see Michael Shannon and Rami Malek and Russell Crowe together. And Richard E. Grant, by the way, who delivers the stinging prosecutorial moment as Maxwell Fry, the British prosecutor. Anyway, I enjoyed it. It was 2 hours of complete escape, oddly, into the Nuremberg trials, which shows how bad things are.
But still, nevertheless, I mean, I think to go back to the point, the existential point for the people in the Trump White House, and this is there should be alarm bells also ringing on the other side when we realize what's at stake for these people. I mean, if they lose the election, if they lose in 2026, they are finished politically, but so much else. I mean, the balance of power is at this point, if it flips against them, it flips on them, and So they have to be thinking, and I know that they are thinking, and this person that I spoke to in the White House said this will be, because, again, Donald Trump can't course correct, this person said this will be an election, 2026, of lawyers.
An election of lawyers, what does that mean? That they're just going to challenge all the results?
Well, I think it begins now. I mean, the program to gerrymander as many congressional seats as they possibly can is essentially a looking at this through a lawyer's lens. Can we do this? How do we do this? How do we create the laws, pass the laws in the variety of states to make this happen? There is the before the Supreme Court. So the Supreme Court is now and has been considering for some time dismantling the final guardrails of the Voting Rights Act. That will have a significant impact. There's a whole range of legal maneuvers that cut down on the ability to get to the polls and who gets to the polls. All of this. So in other words, we're not talking about politics anymore. We're talking about how you harness the voting system to your advantage. And now that while that always goes on to some degree, it has probably never gone on as aggressively as it is now, and I think probably even more so as this election year rolls on. This is the only way the Trump people hold the House. It may be the only way they hold the Senate. It is the only way they hold their jobs and their livelihoods.
Is there also a sense in which they may know that they have only got a year left, and so they're going to speed up even more? I mean, what more can they do? You've talked about the redistricting and in particular the southern states, which might give them another 12 to 15 votes, it's thought, in the southern states. But what else is on his plan that he could do which would be very difficult to undo or take a long time to rebuild? I mean, we've seen the demolition of the East Wing, which we've all forgotten about, even though it's still lying there as a pile of rubble. But what else do you think is on the Project 2025 agenda that he can whip up in the next year?
Yeah, no, and I think you have to see that in a different way. I mean, curiously, I think there will be some restraint on him, or efforts to restrain him, but I think that usually doesn't work, and he just continues on doubling down and to doing what he wants to do. I mean, this is fundamental.
Who would be the restraining voices?
There are no restraining voices because he doesn't listen to anyone, and because people know that the way you have to deal with him is, I mean, that's a bad way to deal with him, to say, hey, this may not be working. But I think there will be restraining voices outside of his hearing.